Hi, I am a 2-mana 2/2 snake horse mount. Kira.
Hi, I'm Oust to Plowshares, Maya. And today, we're taking you through your first ever competitive event.
Congratulations!
Woo!
What is a competitive event and how does it differ from your weekly standard play events or any of your weeklies that your LGS might run?
Well, so for the sake of today's conversation, we're going to define a competitive event as any event that is run at the competitive rules enforcement level. Typically, this is any event with a high level of prizing or like a qualification on the line. And it's any event where the balance needs to lean more on the side of preserving tournament integrity than, maximizing the greatest amount of fun sort of thing. That being said, competitive events, still great fun. Awesome way to test your mettle against other players. But if you're, cheating egregiously, then we will in fact punish you for cheating egregiously.
If you're cheating at all, actually.
It's true. It is true. You're not allowed to do that.
These events can include regional championship qualifiers, regional championships, large store events, 1K, 5K, and 10K events, and qualifiers or larger store-sponsored events. And store-sponsored events can be things like the SCG Opens or the Mana Clash for our Australian fans here.
So, Kira, what changes can you expect as compared to, like you said, like your local Friday Night Magic?
The expectations on the quality of play change pretty drastically. As you mentioned just a moment ago, the emphasis becomes on that more competitive play rather than good standard fun or good modern fun or good pioneer fun. Practicing your new deck, testing your new brew, the focus is on winning. The emphasis is on taking home the trophy or the metaphorical trophy in any case. What also changes is the way in which rules are enforced. The vibe, quote unquote, tends to be a bit more serious. And in line with the overall less maximum fun is there is less room for takesies backsies and casual understanding the gameplay mishaps. There are much more serious infractions and there are much more serious ways in which the rules are enforced. And you, as a judge, are quite familiar with the difference between casual and competitive REL. And so how can we see the rules themselves change at that level?
The TLDR is that we kind of expect you at competitive REL to know how your deck works and know how to play Magic. We expect you to know who has priority when, and we expect you not to do silly stuff like rush through a really long sequence of events and make a bunch of mistakes along the way. Judges at competitive events, we swap from using the Judging at Regular document, which is a document that's focused on maximizing fun and being, very forgiving with our fixes, to the kind of almost scarily named Infraction Procedure Guide.
Ooh, it sounds scary.
It does sound scary. It isn't, but it sounds it. The IPG is, which is what we're going to call this document going forward, is more about ensuring tournament integrity and taking steps to stop people capitalizing on many small mistakes, right? If a mistake happens, we need to come along, fix it, associate a penalty, so that people don't just keep doing things wrong throughout the tournament, because then they're not playing Magic, right? They're playing Magic asterisks with, the addendum of whatever mistakes I decide are the rules.
Asterisk with some exceptions may apply.
Yeah, exactly. Unlike at regular rules enforcement, so this is like your Friday night rules enforcement, if something goes wrong in your game, you're actually not allowed to fix it yourself. You need to call a judge. And judges have to be very specific with judge calls as well, much more so than at regular. If something goes wrong and we need to fix it, we have to issue an infraction or a penalty, which is recorded over the course of the event. Penalties can include warnings, game losses, match losses, and disqualifications.
Really quickly here, can you differentiate how a warning is different from a game loss and how a game loss is different from a match loss for people who may not be familiar with that level of competitive play?
Sure. So a warning is exactly what it sounds like. It says, hey, you did a thing. I'm letting you know that's not allowed. And we're just going to keep track that we've told you that's not allowed. So if you do it too many times again, we might need to talk about a slightly more serious infraction. Most of the time, this is just like a hand wave thing. It's there because something silly has gone wrong and we're educating the players. We're being like, no, look, you did miss that trigger. That trigger was good for you to miss. So, I'm going to give you a warning. Please don't miss those triggers again.
It can even be something as simple as you were meant to scry, but you put the card in the graveyard, which revealed information to your opponent. You call a judge, you go, hey, I was meant to scry this, not surveil it. And they go, yes, that's correct. That is what you were meant to do. Please put it on the bottom of your library where it's supposed to be. Unfortunately, the information is revealed to your opponent.
Yeah, and that stuff like that comes with a warning. So it's like, hey, you silly duffer, please don't do that again. Very gentle slap on the wrist.
Warnings do, as I understand it, vary in their severity, though. Depending on the infraction that is committed, warnings can be or come with the tag of varying levels of severity and varying levels of how much pressure is applied when the slap on the wrist comes.
Sure. So you're talking here about upgrades. So warnings are interesting because they are warnings, but if you get too many for the same thing, what can happen is they can upgrade. And this is essentially us saying, look, you've done this thing 3 times. We've told you not to do it 3 times. And you've just done it again. At some point, we need you to get the message. So we're going to, after our 3rd sternly worded letter, we are actually going to apply some penalties here, and that can be a game loss. And it depends on the infraction. Oftentimes, it is really hard to get a game loss for something you've done in-game. Right? If you've just accidentally cast a spell you shouldn't have, or you have flipped over the top card of your deck or something like that, it's really, really, really hard to get a game loss for that. You have to be trying particularly hard.
You have to be trying to cheat, basically.
Yeah, or you have to be, chronically sleep deprived or, there are all sorts of reasons people do silly stuff. And this is really important over the course of long events because, you can have upgrades where somebody's done something in round 1, something in round 5, and something in round 9, right? And it's relatively clear that those events aren't connected, but because the tournament is long and you've made the same mistake over and over again, we need to apply the penalty. And this is in place to stop people capitalizing on, whether or not they're intentionally making these mistakes. And it depends on the infraction. They will upgrade after different numbers. So there is an infraction that you can get as many warnings for as you want and it will never upgrade. This is failure to maintain the game state. Then most infractions that fall under the gameplay error category, and this is very technical, you don't really need to know this, is if you do the same thing 3 times, it will upgrade to a game loss. And then for tournament errors, so these are things like being late, cussing out your opponent.
Incorrect deck list submission.
Yeah, exactly. If you get, it's usually the second warning for that sort of thing is upgraded because that thing is usually a little bit more in your control and not, an obvious, easy to make mistake.
So then warnings to game losses.
Yeah. So a game loss is, and what we're going to do here is we're going to differentiate between game loss and match loss. So typically a tournament will be best of 3. Right, so you'll play up to 3 games and the first to 2 games wins. So when a game loss is applied, you lose only one of those games. And there's all sorts of weird technical things that can happen that cancel out the game loss, but we're not going to go into detail. But the TLDR is that if you get a game loss, if you're in the middle of the game, you lose the game that you're currently in. And if you're not in a game, the game loss applies to the next game you would play. And it does suck to get a game loss. It happens. Usually game losses are given for things that either really should not have happened or things that have happened too many times. Then you have a match loss. And this is a much more serious penalty. This is for things where the integrity of that particular match has been compromised. So this is things like outside assistance. It is things like occasionally, not bribery, but improperly determining a winner comes with a match loss. Anything where not just one game is affected, but the whole match is affected usually comes with a match loss. And this sucks because it means you don't get to play that round of Magic. So if you're currently in a match, then you lose that match. And if you are in between matches when you get that infraction, it applies to the next match you would play. So these can be quite serious, but again, it's really hard to get one of these without trying. And then last but not least, perhaps the most obvious one is disqualification. This happens if you're cheating. If the judge thinks you're cheating, they're going to disqualify you and remove you from the event. This can happen from other things as well. We have a category of penalties called the unsporting conduct penalties. So this obviously includes cheating, but things like aggressive behavior. So throwing a chair across the room will get you disqualified. Yes, that has happened before.
And these are seriously about the integrity of the tournament and about the way the tournament is perceived and the way that people participate in the tournament.
It's also about protecting the other players in the tournament.
Yes. And that to me falls under integrity. That falls under the notion that everyone has the right to participate in the tournament, has the right to participate safely, and has the right to be there in a professional capacity. And things that endanger that, like cheating, aggressive behavior, threatening behavior, discriminatory behavior, have to be taken away immediately. Stealing have to be taken away immediately because the integrity of the match matters and the way that the game is perceived matters.
Yeah. And I will add the caveat of that was all like very in-depth and very technical. You're not going to need most of that information when you go in. This is just sort of some background so you understand what is happening behind the scenes and what has actually changed. So you're not caught off guard when you when you get a warning for accidentally doing something silly.
The other great thing about judges in those moments is you can ask them to clarify and you can ask them to explain what's happening and they will be very happy to do so.
Oh, absolutely. And oftentimes, if it is something that requires a lengthy explanation, they will give you the time back. They give you the extra time and you get to continue playing at the end of your round. The other thing that often changes in the context of competitive rules enforcement events is the tournament structure. So instead of something like Friday Night Magic, where it's typically a small set number of rounds, say like 3 or 4, with competitive events, there will be enough rounds that there is a clear top 8, right? And then you'll have a top cut. So this top cut will be either usually to top 4 or top 8. Occasionally it will be to top 16, depending on the size of the tournament. These top cuts are single elimination, which means that if you lose the match, you are out of the tournament, and they are usually untimed. So you get to take your time making decisions and really kind of pondering what to do in a way that you don't necessarily need to in a timed round, because you have already proven that you can win games of Magic on time. Additionally, despite these events being longer, there is often little or no time allocated for a meal break. So be sure to bring along snacks.
If you have started playing even just at your casual F&M events, you'll know that rounds of Magic are 15 minutes long in regulation. That is the time period for your best of 3 matches, 15 minutes. A lot of these high-level competitive events are 8 or 9 rounds long. And that is roughly
followed by 3 untimed rounds.
Followed by 3 untimed rounds, but even just in the main series of the event, that is often 8 or 9 hours. That's a whole day. That's a work day. That's putting your hours into the magic factory. That is a full day. So be sure to bring some drinks. Like, make sure, please have a water bottle and stay hydrated. Have a water bottle, maybe a little energy drink, maybe a coffee. Oftentimes, these bigger events, there are food trucks or little stalls available to go purchase some food. Maybe bring some granola along, any other kind of like sugary snack to keep your blood sugar up. Make sure that you come prepared. These events are high level, as we've discussed. And so there's a high level of expectation from you as a player participating in this event as well.
So when it comes to those expectations, what actually differs?
There are not actually too many different expectations at a casual event than to a competitive event for you as a player. You're expected to be early, not just on time, early. Be there early to make sure that the registration of the event has make sure that you are registered correctly, that there is no additional information needed from you. You can check in with the tournament organizers. You'll be able to put the code into the companion app or into Melee or whatever other system is being used to track wins across the event. Be early just to the start of the tournament. You are then expected to be on time to all of your matches. Typically, this means if you are more than 3 minutes late, you will get a game loss, and at 10 minutes late, you'll be given a match loss and dropped from the tournament. If you have a legitimate reason for being late, let the judge know ahead of time, and they will give you a reasonable amount of time for that accommodation.
It's worth saying, a reasonable excuse is more generous than you're probably thinking. If you need the bathroom, that's a very reasonable excuse. If you are, if you are late because you're running around desperately trying to find some sleeves to replace your damaged ones, that is a totally reasonable excuse. As long as you've told the judge, it's fine. But you do need to tell a judge. That is an important part of this process.
Showing up 5 minutes late with a Starbucks in hand is not a reasonable excuse, unfortunately.
No, that is match lossable, baby.
But the reason that this is in place is, again, for the integrity of the tournament. We expect these events to be occurring on time. This is a full-day commitment for everyone involved, not just you. That leads into the next point about you are expected to be courteous and polite. And being courteous means being on time and often being early. It means, sitting down, shaking your opponent's hand, introducing yourself, all of the normal, polite things that you should just be doing in general are expected at a high-level event. Be courteous, be polite. Being rude can get you penalties. As we've discussed, slamming your hands on a table and throwing a chair across the room will get you disqualified. And being rude includes things like being discriminatory, derogatory, misgendering someone. All of those things can get you penalties.
The line for specifically USC minor, which is unsporting conduct minor, is somebody does something that is disruptive to the tournament or could reasonably be considered to be making players around them uncomfortable. There's not even a burden of proof there, right? The judge just needs to think, hey, that has a chance, that it is reasonable to expect that action made players uncomfortable. So that can be anything from using, excessively profane language or, smacking the table in frustration. And it can be small things like even misgendering your opponent. If you're doing it, obviously, if you're not doing it intentionally, then that is broadly fine. But if you're very obviously doing it intentionally, that comes with a significant penalty. That comes with a match loss. So it is important that as much as possible you are courteous and polite and kind. And you won't always get this returned to you, but it is definitely best practice when it comes to both from a match win percentage perspective, but also just from a, we're here, we're jamming a card game, it's great fun. Let's make sure everybody is having a good time.
It's totally fine to be stoic.
Yeah, totally.
You can be stoic, be hard to read, have a bit of a poker face on. That's totally fine, but you are still expected to be polite. Being stoic and being rude are two very different things. Something else that is quite different to regular rules enforcement or your regular Friday Night Magic event at your LGS is that for constructed competitive events, you are expected to provide a deck list to the tournament organizer. And you must submit your deck list prior to the event starting. And this can be different depending on which kind of event you're playing in. For Pro Tour events, deck lists are due the day before the event starts because all of that information is compiled and is given to Frank Karsten, who does an amazing metagame breakdown.
Woo! Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, Frank. But it is vital, again, to the integrity of the tournament because the deck lists are available to all of the judges and to all of the tournament staff. And the reason for this is because of deck checks. Your 75, which is your 60 main deck and your 15 sideboard, will need to match your list exactly. And your starting 60 for game one of each match will need to be the same as your deck list. So always double check your deck list and de-sideboard at the end of a match. Not sideboarding properly or not de-sideboarding your deck is a rules violation.
It's true. And the reason it's a rules violation is because if you're being particularly dodgy, this can be used to try and gain an advantage over your opponent.
If you are doing this to what is sometimes referred to as pre-sideboarding, if I know I'm going into a match against a Corey Steelcutter player and I put all of the temporary lockdowns from my sideboard into my main deck before game one, that's cheating.
Unfortunately, it is in fact cheating.
At some point in the tournament, a judge may ask for your and your opponent's deck and perform a deck check. This is not cause for concern. This is a normal part of every event and is a pseudo-random process that happens. And this, again, is just to, randomly check to make sure everyone's following the rules. Your deck list must 100% match what you have submitted. The cards that are in your deck and that you are playing with must match what you said is in your deck.
Yeah, and importantly, don't feel called out by a deck check. Judges very rarely will, pick and choose exactly who is getting deck checked, and it will usually only be that way if there is some kind of, they have some other reason to believe that you are cheating this way. But aside from that, it's largely determined by the roll of the dice.
If there are issues with your deck, there is a chance that you will receive a game loss.
So, always remember to check your deck list before submission and decideboard at the end of each game. It's really vital. The last thing to note is about information tracking. Life totals and mana cannot be tracked by means that are easily disruptible. So the most notable offender of this is tracking your life total with a dice. Unfortunately, at competitive REL, you can't do that because it's really easy just to knock the dice over accidentally, and it's the same with mana. And when matches can be really close and things can go wrong, it's really important, actually, that judges have access to, if not a history, like something that was written down and scribed intentionally so that we can kind of work backwards and determine what has gone wrong, which is a lot of what our job is sometimes. It is expected that you use a pen and a paper or other methods to track this information that aren't knockable, so that the information is harder to lose. And this can include the Magic the Gathering companion app on your phone. That being said, during a match of Magic the Gathering, you can't use your phone except to track life totals and to use the Magic the Gathering companion app. If you choose to do it this way, please be sure to turn off your notifications. This has happened more than once, but accidentally getting a text from somebody that, could be construed as play advice is a way that you can lose matches of Magic. So either pop your phone on airplane mode or just turn off your notifications. Hit that do not disturb button and all will be well with the world. And when in doubt, use pen and paper and call a judge.
Call a judge is just, I want a t-shirt that says just call a judge.
Yeah.
That's gonna be my Christmas present for you this year. It's just call a judge.
Can we get Pog t-shirts that is rolly with a speech bubble that says call a judge?
Just call a judge. Just call a judge. Genuinely. And there's nothing inherently bad about calling a judge. And judges seem, especially at competitive events, can seem like these really intimidating forces. But in some of the coverage that I just watched, there were players on coverage calling a judge to clarify where a card went after Rest in Peace was destroyed.
Yeah.
Oh, I've cast Get Lost on the Rest in Peace. Does the Get Lost go to the exile before the Rest in Peace goes to the graveyard, or is it exiled? That's a totally normal question to ask because, unfortunately, Magic's a pretty complicated game, and it has some complicated interactions that not everyone is 100% across, myself included. I didn't know the answer to that question, but the players on coverage, who are these, pro, semi-pro players, judge, what happens here? And there's nothing wrong with it. It's not, getting anyone in trouble. It's not going to lead to a warning or a game loss. You're just asking a question about the state of the game and how to apply the rules properly.
Absolutely. And to harken back to the judge episode that we did a little bit earlier on, just always call your judge. Say hi to the judge at the event. Get to know them. They are so overwhelmingly friendly figures that the moment you start to break the ice, you will realize that they're wonderful and lovely, and you can just call on them for anything. The biggest mistake a lot of Magic players make is not calling judge enough, because you just can. That's what we're here for. The worst we'll tell you is no, we can't do that.
The TLDR, competitive tournaments are great fun. They're an awesome way to test your mettle against other good players. I highly recommend. A lot of players tend to have this fear of competitive events. I'm not good enough. I've not played enough yet. My deck isn't meta. At some level, doesn't matter. Play it anyways.
Yeah,
Get the
fun.
experience. They're fun. And it's a different enough structure and different enough expectation to your regular weekly events that you're going to pick up a few new skills. Or even if you don't play optimally, Lord knows that's been me in any situation. I have played several RCQs where I have done miserably, but I'm learning a lot in all of my matches because I'm playing against people who either run the circuit pretty regularly or are playing other high-level decks, and I'm learning about interactions. I'm learning about better decisions I could be making. Should have played this spell before that one. Should have tapped my mana a little bit differently. Should have scryed off of this before I was able to do, X, Y, or Z. Do it anyways.
Yeah, O3 Milkshake bracket, best bracket, honestly.
Milkshake bracket. We are proud people. We own the Milkshake bracket.
Absolutely.
We have our own little stand. We sell milkshakes.
To ourselves. It's wonderful. We're there so often that we bring our own milkshakes. It's phenomenal.
And there's so much to be said, again, about the experience of just playing a competitive event. Oftentimes as well, if you're playing these store showdown events, you get a cool promo just for playing the event. You'll almost always get a booster pack as well just for showing up. And so it's a great way to increase your inventory of Magic cards, and you get a cool, fun promo as well that you only often get through playing these store showdown events or these RCQs.
Also, and most importantly, you get to play Magic.
You get to play more Magic.
Which is always a good thing, and ultimately that's just what these events are. It's more Magic, except some amount of the people care a little bit more, and there's a judge there sometimes. Just go play more Magic. It's more Magic all the time, more Magic. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
With all that said, that's all we have for you today. We look forward to seeing you again next week. New episodes release on Mondays at 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Until then, you can keep track of all of our releases at Raise MTG on both Instagram and Blue Sky. You can find me on the same platforms at Kira Bobira and Maya at Maya MTG. A big thank you to the State Library Victoria for the ongoing use of their space. And until next week, remember, open hostilities are strictly forbidden at the Inventors Fair, but accidents still happen.